I said, why they call that man grandma? He said, because he's an old blister. I said, an old blister. He said, yeah, punk. I'm like, a punk? He said, yeah, he growls. I said, dude growls? He said, yeah, man, and he grunts. I said, bruh. Then I say, why does he grunt and growl? Dude says, because he used to take that thing. You heard me? I'm like, yeah, bro, I hear you. Then he says, now he a madam to these other boys. So they call dude grandma. So that's how they called him grandma, because he was a mistress or a madam. Basically, an ugly blister that looked like a skin infection. He was full of that pus. But he had a responsibility, a job, so to speak. And grandma, well, he took his job serious. He taught them other punks that were younger exactly what it was going to take to be good punks. What is a good punk, you might add? Well, a good punk is somebody who comes into the prison system and assimilates accordingly. So what will happen is grandma would take the punk under his proverbial wing and start training the boy or the boys on how to properly proceed and carry themselves in prison, because they're fresh fish or they're new turnouts. So they don't know how to handle themselves as a female or a punk. So they have to figure out the ways, or they have to be taught the ways and learn the ways, because there's only a set time where they're going to get a grace period. And that grace period is dependent on how the other convicts or the prisoners, who are what they consider old mans or pimps. How long is the grace period? Well, that depends on those individuals who are the ones who keep the punks under their wings and protect them and pimp them out, or the punks are committed to them because that's their boyfriend. Anyway, grandma would teach the boys how to pee properly, because once you become a boy in Louisiana prisons, you can't stand up to pee no more. You have to sit down to pee. So they got to learn to clean the toilet after themselves, sit down to pee, and they can't let their private part flop around and flop out, because that's a sign of disrespect. And dudes are going to get off on them if they think they're being disrespected. Listen, Louisiana prison got a lot of sick and twisted sexual activity going on. You know what I mean? But when it comes down to it, if dudes think that the sexual activity is aimed toward them, well, they're going to get up and handle their business, because nobody wants to be the next punk that's underneath grandma's wing. So grandma had a full-time job teaching these boys how to become punks or girls. And one of the things that grandma had to teach them that I learned when I went to prison, and I thought it was the most absurd and disgusting thing that I experienced, when I was in the dormitory, and they had about 8 punks in the dormitory. And one day the whole dorm smelled like booty. I couldn't figure out why. And I'm like, it smells nasty in here. And the dude's like, man, be cool, man. He said, we all smell it. He said, man, it's just them punks. They douching. I said, the punks are douching? A douche is how a woman cleans herself out. Well, grandma taught the punks how to clean themselves out. Punks eat food just like anybody else. And their colon and their stomach is filled with waste. Well, when dudes go to get busy with the punks on Friday and Saturday night, the punks got to flush all that food out. So what they do is they take a water bottle or a shampoo bottle and they put warm water in it with soap. They squeeze it and they put it up there and they let it out. And that's what they call douching. So grandma had to teach the boys how to, properly clean their booty. This is disgusting. I know. It's disturbing. I know. I was a teenager in prison seeing this stuff. I'm just sharing it, telling you. Imagine how my young mind felt. I thought it was absolutely horrible. Anyway, so grandma got to teach these boys how to dress properly, because you can't dress like a dude no more. They got to get the tight-fitting clothes from the state. So what they'll do is they get the tight-fitting clothes and they got to tie their shirt up in a knot so their stomach shows. And believe me, ain't nothing like watching an old ugly blister or an ugly boy with a big fat stomach with the shirt tied in a knot, walking around twitching. Man, this stuff is crazy. I know. Welcome to Louisiana prisons. Grandma had to also teach these punks that when it was time to shower, they were not allowed to get into a shower with another man. That's right. The only way a punk can get in the shower with a man is if that man is his old man. That's what they call a prison dude who is dating a punk, an old man. So the old man is the only way the punk can get in the shower. If a punk gets in the shower with you in prison, you better react immediately. Knock him out, go put your shoes on, shank him, do whatever you got to do. But you got to let the world know that, look, this ain't going to go down. Not to you and not on your watch. So what will happen is the grandma would teach the punks, the madam would teach the punks when and when not to shower. They would teach the punk, the grandma, the madam would teach the punk how to properly, you know what I mean, walk around the dorm and when to go underneath the bunk and to make sure when they went underneath the bunk, it had to be at a certain time because if not, it was considered disrespectful. So a lot of times on Friday and Saturday nights, for a certain period throughout the time, dudes knew that the punks were going to go underneath the bunk and, you know, dudes who were propositioning the punks would go underneath the bunk and they would put blankets to cover the area that they went underneath the bunk. And the dude who was sleeping next to him was sleeping in the bunk area. They would usually know that they would give him a grace period. There'd be a couple hours where the punks can go get underneath the bunks. And that's the times dudes would be playing dominoes, they'd be playing cards. And so there was usually some kind of system worked out to where nobody would get disrespected because they would be in their area. Now, if a dude don't want that to go down next to his bunk, then don't do it. Because a dude can lay the law down and be like, look, man, don't do that by my rack. And so the punks would have to find out through grandma that, look, they can't play that game with that dude, so they have to find a different rack to go by. This was happening a lot inside the prison system. And another thing they had to do, they had to get that medicine. So grandma would teach the punks, look, you got to go see the nurse, and the nurse is going to put you on pill call. And during pill call, you got to go take that medicine because you know you're going to get that pus. Because grandma's probably hitting them and breaking them in. And then they got to hit grandma, and they get broken in. And once one of them has that pus, which is HIV, then chances are that pus is going to get thrown around everywhere. And so a lot of dudes were going inside the prison system and they were getting that, getting that pus. And they call it that pus or that gangster. They're like, dang, man, dude went to prison and he didn't have that gangster and he came back out and he got that gangster. Man, look, man, your life is on borrowed time. Or, you know what I mean? You got to let people know, man, you can't go around now that you out here and get yourself a wife and you're going to hand her that gangster. And you knew you had that gangster because you knew you was messing with them boys. But you ain't want to be clean and come straight forward. So grandma would have to navigate all this stuff to teach the new boys on how to be respectable boys. See, grandma had a job. And so that's why they call grandma grandma. And the more I thought about it, I thought to myself, I said, okay, that makes sense. Sounds like a grandma to me. Taking the other girls under her wing, teaching them how to cook and clean. That's another thing. In prison, grandma taught them punks how to cook and clean because punks get their hustle on by folding laundry. You pay the punk and the punk will fold your laundry, get your laundry out the laundry buggy, take your dirty laundry, wash it, scrub it inside the sink or the toilets. Yeah, they use the toilet sometimes as a wash machine. They clean the toilet out with that bleach real good. And then there's a certain toilet they use. People still poo in the toilet. But there's a certain time they clean it and then they wash clothes in it too. And they hit that industrial flusher. Man, you can hit 5 flushes back to back and it don't miss. It ain't no time where the water got to refill. It's under pressure constantly. You can put a sheet down there. Dude's flushing evidence down there. God coming, man coming. Dude's like, man, you ain't just flushed my weed down there, huh? He's like, oh man, my bad. Shank, 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 shank. That's the kind of crazy stuff that's going on in prisons. And that's the kind of stuff that you get on a Pen and the Shank, the most unusual and unique crime in prison channel experience on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification so you know the next time I got another good crazy story about somebody like grandma. You never know what I'm going to drop. That's why I call it unusual and unique. Man, grandma was one ugly blister, man. I'm telling you, man. They got some ugly boys up in there, man. Some ugly punks, man. And these dudes, man, they so institutionalized that they running after these punks like they real females. And they really fighting and shanking each other and losing good time. Man, they staying in prison longer. And they got a wife and kids that's out there in society waiting for them. There's all kind of foolishness you can get caught up in prison. They got the main things. Don't mess with punks. Don't mess with dope. Don't mess with gambling. You stay away from those three things and you can make it out of prison. You know what I mean? Mostly unscathed, and still be a legitimate person in society knowing that, nothing bad happened to you. Now, if you're a gangster, I guess you can still mess with gambling. I mean, I gambled in prison, And let me tell you something else that grandma's training them punks to do. Grandma's training them punks to go after other inmates who ain't punks yet, that they suspect that they could try and turn that person into a punk. Many of dudes went underneath them bunks, a man, and came back from out underneath them bunks, a boy. I've seen it happen too many times. And so sometimes you got to put them punks in their place. You know what I mean? I had to do my fights. Everybody got to fight, unless you're just a savage. I was just a little young dude. And so 19, 20 years old. Of course, I had to get in my fights. But it's better to get in your fights and draw the line in the sand than have to go underneath that bunk, a man. And when you come back from underneath that bunk, see, them punks test you. That's what they said. They said you go under there thinking you're going to get some kind of gratification. And while you're underneath that bunk with them covers, hiding everything, them punks are planning and plotting. And when they come back out from underneath them bunks, they say they're like a phoenix. A punk is like a phoenix. That's what they said. They rise up out of the ashes of underneath the bunk. This is worse than it. That clown ain't got nothing on these boys. And so that punk will come out of there, and then that punk will start rumors. Yeah, when he was underneath the bunk with me. And that's how dudes get turned out. And they say the punk will say, yeah, he let me hit him. You can figure out what he let me hit him means. And now, all of a sudden, the dude who thought he was getting gratification, now he's a turnout. Or he gets tested because the punk will slap him in the face. And they got some of the punks, man, they big. They big. You know what I mean? And they can fight. Boom, slap a dude. And then the dude don't do nothing back. Well, what do you think's going to happen? Now grandma got another one. Man, give me a like and subscribe to the Pen and the Shank. I know this stuff is absurd. But I got to give it to y'all the way it was in prison. And I got some really, really, really good stories coming up soon that I'm saving. As we build this community up, as we build it up a little bit more, I'm going to pull them out the back pocket, pull them out the tool bag. I got one about a prison that's so fearful, so frightful. It makes horror movies look like you rather wind up in a house with 1,000 corpses than wind up in this place. That's how brutal it was. These good old boys would get with you. At least you know one thing. House of 1,000 corpses, that's just a movie. I don't know. They really got crazy people out there. I know they got crazy people in prison. Man, give me a like and subscribe. Let's get it.